Good evening, everyone. I'm Pastor Evie Martin. I think I've met all of you in the room, but it's great to be gathered together. I want to just kind of explain much of the purpose of what we're doing here tonight. I wanted to also offer a special thanks to Candace Shaw, our Director of Spiritual Formation, Pastor Cassie, who couldn't be here tonight because of something, and Janessa, Mandy, so many staff that sort of collaborated and came together with this idea and helping it unfold, and just a lot of thought and effort has gone into this night, and I've gotten a sneak preview of what's coming later, and it's going to be really fun. So I'm just really grateful for each one of you for investing time here. We hope that this is a way for us to invest in you spiritually, as leaders, as people who serve here in the church, as people who participate in the life of Plattwoods Church. We hope that you think of this as us investing in you so that you can pour out into others as well. Every week, as Pastor Jess said, we at Plattwoods Church say you're welcome here with your questions, your curiosity, your struggles, and your celebrations, right? If you've come more than once, you probably start getting that in your head. Why? Why do we say that? Curiosity is often the one that jumps out the most to people when we say that list of things. Struggles and celebrations, sure, churches do that all the time. Questions and curiosity? That's different. Why? Why do we say curiosity? It's not a usual church word. It's not a word that most people associate with church. It's not a word that's often referred to as a religious or spiritual value. We name it as one of our core values, and that's unusual for people. When we were going through the process of trying to identify values here, it was about 3 years ago now, our leadership council and staff and others in the church, as we were workshopping these things, I floated it out to one of my colleagues. She's a pastor in Kansas, and curiosity was one of them, and she was like, that doesn't sound churchy. Why do you think that? Like other pastors even were like, is that a church value? So, is curiosity even related to our faith? How do these things connect? Because it does feel really unusual for people when they hear that sometimes. So I wanted my role tonight, as I'm here, and I do apologize. Any of you who had kids that went through school, like April and May, things pop up. My kid's getting an award tonight. I didn't know about that when we planned this months ago. So I'm gonna try to race to get there to see him. So I apologize because I really wanna stay here, but it's all of the things. So anyway, my role tonight before all of that chaos is to try to lay a framework, lay a framework for a theology of curiosity. Answer that why question. Why is curiosity a value in a church? Is there a theology around curiosity? So that's sort of my task. And I wanna offer you 3 legs to that stool, if you will. There's probably more. Probably could be a 4 or 5 or 6-legged stool, but there's gonna be 3 today. First of all, curiosity shapes us in humility and wonder. That would be my first leg of the stool. I don't know if we have a slide for that. Do we have a slide for that? Great. I think we do. Look at that. Shapes us in humility and wonder. In the book of Proverbs, that's a collection, in the Old Testament, it's a collection of wisdom sayings. We find a lot about the pursuit of wisdom and knowledge in Proverbs, how that is a lifelong practice for the people of God. And then we also find this interesting little verse, Proverbs 25:2. It says, "It is the glory of God to hide something, and the glory of kings to discover something." I think that's such a funny little verse. It gives us this image of God having hidden all sorts of wondrous gifts and surprises and treasures for us all throughout creation, like an Easter egg hunt, like we just did a couple weeks ago. That is the glory of God embedded in the world all around us, including in other people. And then it's our gift, it's our pleasure, it's our privilege to discover such glory where it is hidden. It is God's invitation to our curiosity. And that curiosity is cultivated in the kinds of questions we ask, our wondering, where we're looking for it, what we're curious about. So a church that remembers how to ask good questions is a curious church. And that curiosity shapes us in humility, first of all, because there is so much we do not know. And then secondly, we delight in wonder about God who made us and hid all of these treasures for us, other people who walk with us, who contain these treasures, and the world around us in all of its beauty and brokenness. All of these surprises that God has hidden for us in this life. So curiosity shapes us in humility and wonder. The second leg of the stool that I would name is that curiosity counteracts the illusion of certainty. At its best, the church is a place of spiritual journey, of communal growth, of seeking and of searching, of gaining clarity, but also holding ambiguity together. But that's really hard work for a group of people, different people, to do. And so more often, at its worst, the church becomes a place that deals in certainty. Maybe you've had this experience in your church experience in the past. The church doles out trite answers to life's complicated problems. It placates, it sedates people with a set of right answers or beliefs over and against wrong behaviors, because honestly, that is easier. It's easier to control people, it's easier to be successful, it's easier to grow in number, because on the flip side of this, so many people want the simplicity of an answer. That requires less work than the ambiguity of a question. But certainty in faith actually stunts our spiritual growth. The danger of certainty in a journey of faith is that once you are certain about what God is like, about how God reacts to us, about how God thinks or what God's judgment is and who it is for, then there's nothing left of God to experience. You have, in effect, become God. You've reached the end of wonder and awe, and now you have no need for faith. Questions and doubt are not the opposite of faith. Certainty is the opposite of faith. I want to share someone else's words on this, someone else's thinking. I'm going to share a video by a conversation by Richard Beck. He's a professor of psychology at Abilene Christian University in the panhandle of Texas, way out in the desert. He's also an author. He's written a lot of books about the intersection between psychology and the Christian faith. So I'm going to share some of his thoughts on certainty, sort of this danger, the antithesis of curiosity when we get to certainty. It's about 6 minutes long. He goes real deep. So just be ready. Be ready. Just be ready to hold that, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
What were you in for?
What was I in for prison?
What was Jesus in for?
Many crimes.
Jesus is a criminal.
Yeah, well, he was. I mean, that's a historical attested fact that he was killed as a criminal outside the gates. I think that's the shock of it, isn't it? Is that Jesus is condemned as a criminal under the law, cursed by God, and yet that person, the bandit, the insurrectionist, the God-cursed one hanging on the tree is God incarnate. I think that's the most subversive.
God cursed Jesus?
The idea that God is found among the God-cursed, I think, is one of the most radical religious or anti-religious sentiments in the history of the world. I mean, it is the most subversive truth ever, I think.
Why?
Well, because how can you trust yourself, or how can a religious community ever really trust itself that they know right from wrong, good and evil, that they can throw a stone and condemn with the crucifixion kind of standing there against all history? That we got it so wrong that we know who's cursed by God with absolute moral authority, and yet their God is the one being crucified. So I just think that the cross kind of stands as a kind of a big sign of contradiction to all human pretensions that we can be ultimate and final arbiters of the saints and the sinners, the damned and the lost and the saved. I think the cross is like this big pause on any human pretension to kind of know with any sort of finality about who's saved and who's lost. I mean, if we kill God, how can we ever trust ourselves to kill anybody ever again?
That's pretty low.
Yeah, that's my take. I mean, how could you ever trust yourself that you have that right, knowing that we killed love? I just think that sows seeds of great, or should sow seeds of great suspicion into our own self-righteousness.
Why?
Well, I think we deceive ourselves. We think that we trust our own virtue, we trust our own righteousness, we trust our own ability that we can speak authoritatively for God, or that we're absolutely convinced that God is on our side. And I think whenever that settles in,
Meaning on our side and not on somebody else's
not
side.
somebody else's side, whenever that kind of settles in into a kind of a certainty, I think that's when religion goes south.
It's sustainable though, isn't it?
No, it's very sustainable, and because it feels good. I think, speaking as a psychologist, there's something very comforting about knowing that you have the truth, that God is on your side, that the angels of light are, got your back, and you're fighting against the hordes of darkness. I think that's a very comforting place to be, given the anxieties we face as human beings about the meaning of it all. And so I do think there's a way that our thirst for comfort, our thirst for certainty gets implicated in our violence. So we want that certainty, it feels good, but then that puts us in an oppositional, suspicious relationship with anybody that disagrees with us. And so the cross stands there as a sign of contradiction, to put a pause on that, or at least make us question that. Maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe God is on the other side of the railroad tracks. Maybe God is for them, against me. Walter Brueggemann calls that the prophetic imagination, where the first move of the prophet is to proclaim the freedom of God. That is to say, that God is free of the chains that the community has placed upon God, the way that the community has co-opted God. So God is free to do what? Free to be over there, and free to speak a prophetic indictment back on my group or my understandings. But it's when God becomes captured by us, and God becomes just kind of the religious justification for my projects.
God can be captured.
Yeah, I mean, psychologically, theologically captured. You get God in a box, and then God is just at that point a tool. And the biblical word for that is idolatry. That God is being put at the service of some larger project. And that larger project is, my faith tradition, my national project, an empire, and God just becomes a baptism of myself and my goals and my projects. And so God is being used for my purposes.
Let the freedom of God capture your imagination. I've watched that like 6 times, and every time I'm like, as you can hear, but also as you know, the stakes are high when we don't let the freedom of God capture our imagination. And so a curious church, a curious people will not settle for certainty. Certainty is the antithesis of curiosity. The third tenet, or the third leg of the stool I would offer is that Jesus invites curiosity. We don't just do this in a vacuum. Jesus invites this from us. You've probably, if you've read any of the Gospels, you've had the experience of reading or listening to something Jesus said, some teaching, some example, and going, huh? Like, what? What do you mean, Jesus? I think that's intentional on his part. I think that was part of his pedagogy, his philosophy of teaching. So often he spoke in parables, or he spoke in ambiguous imagery, not in black and white information. He's not giving you a list of these are the things you have to know or believe. He's not a this or that kind of teacher. His interactions with countless people in the Gospels demonstrate more of this back and forth conversation in which he asks questions and they ask questions. Maybe he asks more questions. He uses their curiosity to invite them into a deeper relationship with him. You've heard the line, "Whoever has ears, let them hear." Jesus repeats that on more than one occasion, and I think it's his way of inviting in the curious. Those who do not hear are the ones who are not trying to. They think they've already got it figured out. So a church can and should be curious because Jesus himself invites us to. So if you think of that as your theological framework for curiosity as we head into the rest of this evening, because we live in a world that thinks it is full of answers. The voices all around us are just shouting a cacophony of answers at us, fighting for our agreement with them all the time. Think of that just for a minute. Like, you can give examples. What are examples of who has answers for us? Who's just offering us answers for things we didn't even ask? Just in general. The news. Social media. Stores, advertising, marketing. Yeah. Political pundits, and you said the news, the president. Religious leaders can fall into this trap too. Peers. Yeah. I don't think that noise is going to die down anytime soon. So what if instead of just gobbling up all the answers that are swirling around us or trying to make sense out of them, we took a page from Jesus' playbook and asked questions instead? What understanding could we come to about ourselves, about God, about the world around us? How can we grow deeper as curious Christians? And that is what the rest of tonight is about. So thank you for diving in.
Wasn't that a fun little video? So we're talking about curiosity tonight. Obviously, curiosity goes through all of our faith, all of our ministry areas of the church. But one place that we really find curiosity is in our youngest members of our church. So tonight I thought we should talk to Janessa, who is our director of students here at Plattwoods. And so I'll let her introduce herself and tell us how curiosity plays a role in her ministry.
Yeah, so like Candace said, my name is Janessa Aston. I work with grade 6 to 12 in our church. And so, there's a lot of curiosity in middle school and high school students, especially and even younger, obviously. It doesn't just happen in middle school and high school. So this past Sunday, we did Ask a Pastor night. This stack is all the questions that kids had on Sunday, which we didn't get to all of them, which is kind of a bummer. But some of them, I pulled some silly ones and a serious one. But students are asking questions like, what was Jesus' favorite color? I don't know. Who made the church? What kind of food did Jesus eat? Why did God make us? Or then the one that everyone kind of went, Does God believe that people are inherently good or bad? And does God look for the best over our flaws? And so we have everywhere from what is Jesus' favorite color to are we good or bad inherently? Which is just a lot.
And Pastor Evie had to answer those on the fly. She did not know what questions were coming.
Yeah, so, Evie, I don't know that we got to that question.
Pastor Evie.
I know, right? I was also very curious about that. I was like, Jesus should have put that in his journal, and it's probably hidden somewhere. We don't have that. But there's just curiosity all over the place in student ministry. Sometimes it's questions like that. Sometimes we're in the middle of serving, and it's is this a potato that someone would eat? Every single time they held up a potato for 2 hours.
That was my child who asked that.
Yeah. When we were at Harvesters, it was great. Yeah, so it just like, it happens in all of the places, whether we're serving or at youth night or just like in their lives, right? Like they're in the phase of their life where they're asking questions like, who are my friends? Whether through their words or through their actions. It doesn't always have to be like what they're saying. Sometimes just like who they are is just like a curious person. But then there's also questions like, what am I doing with my life? Like that's like when they start getting into senior year, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to have my whole life figured out and I'm only 17. What do I do? So yeah.
What differences do you see between how students exhibit curiosity and how adults exhibit curiosity?
So when I was thinking about this, do you like remember when you were younger how big your world felt? Like just like how infinite things were? Like, I don't know, like there's somewhere in our lives where we go from like, I am like playing and I'm imaginative and creative and talking about like time travel and like adventures on the fly, and I'm stopping to look at all of the flowers, which are probably weeds, but like they're still flowers and they're still beautiful. And then like the stories you're engaging in are more fantastical and all of these things. And then somewhere along the way, it's like our world goes from like all of these infinite possibilities to the finite. Like we go from like, okay, well, instead of like time travel and adventures, I'm going from like, how long is my drive gonna take in like a GPS? Like I'm like thinking about traffic, or I'm like the flowers go to like the screensavers on my laptop. So somewhere along the way, we go from like our world is huge to like my world is finite. And I think some of that has to do with just how like society, like we go through like school and stuff, right? We go from like, I gotta learn about English and history and science and math. But then you go from that to know one thing. This is your one field of study. This is your one thing you're doing in life. So instead of learning about all of the things, you're like, this is my specialty. And then the other things you're maybe interested in are labeled as distractions. So it's somewhere like, it's almost like in young adulthood, there's like, it's not set up for curiosity. So like our muscle of curiosity just like kind of starts atrophying, like we're not using it very often because we're like, this is the thing I do. So then people start asking you the question, what do you do? Which then becomes kind of sort of like the question of, well, who are you? And like, you're like, well, this is my job. You're not answering the question of like, well, these are my other interests. These are the other things I wonder about. These are the other things I'm curious about. And so some, like in this young adulthood that we've set up, we like lose space for curiosity, and our world does go from infinite to like this finite little realm. And that's getting younger and younger, because like I remember being in 8th grade and they were like, think of your 4-year plan for high school that's then gonna set up your college or like whatever trade school or whatever you're going to. So when you're 13, they're like, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, I am 32 and I still don't know what I'm doing with my life. So yeah, I think we go from this like, we're asking questions all the time to like, ask questions about this one thing to this is what I know to then you're like, well, where did the curiosity end up?
What do you think that we can do to grow that muscle in ourselves and also to encourage other people, especially younger people? Sometimes we as adults kind of maybe discourage questions, especially if we've had 100 in a row. But what can we do to encourage curiosity in other people as well as ourselves?
Yeah, so I think, just how you respond to a question is really important. And I think we all like intrinsically know that, but like just being aware, like your facial, like how your face is when someone asks you a question, it matters. It will either like might shut down a question, or it might be like, oh, I can continue to ask questions here. Even if your words are saying, I want you to keep asking me a question, but if your body language is saying no, that matters. And like kids and students pick up on that. And so they might start realizing, I can't ask those kind of questions. If it's like a really big question about God, you'd be like, oh, I can't ask that question. I can't ask that question at church. Like, well, then where else are you going to ask it? Probably ChatGPT is where they're going, or some kind of AI. And so, yeah, just being aware of that. So I think when we start talking about like when we're adults and trying to regain that muscle of curiosity, just like finding little places to add more questions in your life, even like in your faith. Like, what if you prayed a whole prayer of just questions, like once a week? Like, what would that look like? Or what if when you do read scripture, you're like, if you like journal or you're like, just like spend time thinking about that, you're only asking questions. And so, yeah, I couldn't like go to the gym today and pick up 400 pounds. I could maybe get there one day, but I'd have to work at it. And so if your muscle like atrophies in young adulthood and you're like, oh, I need to like get this muscle of curiosity back, you have to slowly step into it. You can't go from 0 to 100. If you can, that is incredible. Please talk to me. I want to know. But yeah, slowly adding back in curiosity in different ways would be a way I think adults could get that muscle back.
I love that. I wonder how you practice curiosity in your life and your faith.
Yeah, a big one for me is play. I think as adults, we forget how to do that. Again, because you're like, what is the thing that you do in your life? Like, this is my job, this is who I am. And so I also think it's easier to be curious if you're coming from a place of joy. And I think often we forget that joy is a fruit of the Spirit, not seriousness. And so, so if you're coming from a place of joy, it's easier to be like, oh my gosh, I like want to know more about these things. I want to know more about these people that I'm hanging out with. It's easier to ask questions of people when you're doing something fun. Some of my best conversations with my friend has been when we were at the pool playing like catch and like those little like submarines that like kids play with. I played with those last summer when I was 31. It was great. So yeah, I just think play is a spiritual practice, but then yeah, also just helps us be curious. What about you? What is a way that you practice curiosity?
I love learning through all different ways. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. And I love just the internal learning of that. I try to, read all genres, listen to all kinds of, read like faith books, fiction books. But I think one of my favorite parts of it is I have several people that I buddy read books with. And so over the course of several years, we've read a whole bunch of books together. And so having someone to talk about the things that we're reading and learning and then making those connections like over the years has been great. Like we'll read this like nonfiction book and we're like, oh, that's kind of like when we read Pride and Prejudice a couple of years ago or something, and like making those connections. I love that's like makes the curiosity, like conversation brings out curiosity a
Absolutely.
lot. So like learning and then talking about it is something that's really like is how I practice curiosity. But I love the idea of the prayer, like praying in questions. Also, I think you had said earlier about the communion. You want to tell us about
Yeah, so at youth group this year, we made a whole liturgy that we just turned like the Great Thanksgiving into questions. So like, what if you took like the Apostles' Creed and you just turned it into questions and you like read that for yourself for like a week or a month or whatever? So just taking the things that are already in your life that are already a practice, how can you turn those into questions that are like, start with yourself, but then like bringing that to a friend and being like, I don't know, let's just talk through communion liturgy, but as questions. What do you think? So yeah, I think those little tweaks can add curiosity into daily life.
I love that. Years ago, I used to use a children's curriculum in a different church that was godly play, and all of the all the discussion questions start with "I wonder." So you just read the story, and then it says, "I wonder where you see yourself in the story. I wonder which part of this story you think is most important. I wonder which part of the story you would leave out and we would still have all the story that we needed." And I loved it because there was no like right or wrong answers. It's just curiosity. And I learned so much through that. And it's such a faith-building exercise when you approach scripture with an I wonder point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, so something that I think is really important right now, like we're in the information age, right? Like I can have I wonder questions about scripture. I could go ask the internet that immediately. But when a kid and a student comes to me and asks that question, like, what an honor. They're asking us instead of the internet. So what if when someone asked us a question, kid, student, person in our life, where we're like, instead of thinking, oh, I need to defend what I know in this situation, it's like, I am honored you are asking me this question. Like this position of like, yeah, I'm honored that you're asking me. Like this shows that like I have created a safe place. Like, you know, I am a safe person to ask big questions to, or just any questions to, because you're showing me that like you might not know something. So even if they're trying to like as an attacky kind of stance, you can be like, I am honored you're asking me this question.
I wonder if you have anything else you'd like to share with us about curiosity.
If you want to be surrounded by more curiosity, if you're like, man, that like muscle has really atrophied, great place is to be surrounded by kids and students, because there will be questions all the time. So if you're like, I want to know more about that, you can talk to me or Mandy, and we can get you plugged in to be surrounded by curiosity as you volunteer.
I love it. I wonder if you all want to thank Janessa for being with us.